tube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday. I've got the rad pad all fired up here, and it's also Tech Apocalypse here at Hyde Cottage, ongoing, an ongoing melodrama where so much of my technology is refusing to work, or working inconsistently, glitching of one kind or another. And I've been working with a whole bunch of different pieces of technology and maybe buying a few more. But just today, I was alerted to the possibility that maybe the program I was using to record videos might be the problem. That maybe I should finally be the last YouTuber in the world who gets on board with iMovie and gives it a try. So I'm going to try it for a couple of today's videos and see if it causes any problems. Maybe it solves problems. So we're going to do the Tag Tuesday tag on iMovie for the very first time and see what happens. If I can do very basic stuff, if I can record a video on iMovie, transport it to my desktop, and then upload it to YouTube, no edits, no frills, no falderall, if I can do that, then I have another method for making videos. And if I remember correctly from what little I knew, I flirted with iMovie years ago and was very frustrated by how complex it seemed. But if I remember correctly, iMovie allows me to do a lot more than just that, than just record an unedited video and upload it to YouTube. If that's true, then I might finally be able, if this works, if this experiment works, I might finally be able to put pictures up on the screen, which would be kind of amazing. But for now, I'm just gonna try this in the very simplest way and see if it works. See if I'm looking in the right place. See if the audio and visual is okay. So we're gonna do today's tag, and today's tag is part of a series that Jim at Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff is doing, where he does one tag for every letter of the alphabet, and we're up to F. We're up to F, the F tag today. So I thought we'd just go through the prompts and see what kind of trouble we can get into. Prompt number 1 is F is for France. Who is your favorite French author? And you might think immediately I'm going to say Jules Verne. I've made no secret of my love of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Or you might think Alexander Dumas, because I've made no secret of my love of his reading, especially in Lawrence Ellsworth's new English language translations from Pegasus Books. That whole row, it's a whole bookshelf of Dumas now, and they're all fantastic. Or you might think I'm going to get a little bit more highbrow, Balzac, who is, indisputably genius. But if I have to pick just one, if I have to pick my absolute favorite French author, it's going to have to be Stendhal. So I'm going to choose, even though it's a much smaller number of masterpieces, I'm still going to choose Stendhal. The next prompt is F is for fiction. Approximately what percentage of your reading is fiction? And for me, much like in Jim's own answer, it's around 80%. You wouldn't think that because of how much nonfiction I read. But I read a lot of fiction. If it's not 80%, it's certainly well above 50%. I read pretty much any fiction that crosses my plate. I also read pretty much any nonfiction, but with nonfiction, it's so much easier to immediately spot a book that is a complete waste of time. Whereas with fiction, even the tritest looking genre fiction, a writer can do something I've never seen before, or do something I have seen before, but do it in an interesting way. Whereas a 170-page introductory volume to the history of the Normans, or a 150-page introductory book about the Battle of Agincourt, isn't going to do that. Almost certainly it is not. And there's a huge amount of nonfiction that falls under that kind of broad umbrella. A huge amount of nonfiction that I know ahead of time is going to be a complete waste of my time. Whereas fiction, there's a wild card element that doesn't always apply. And that tends to mean that I read a lot more fiction all the way to the end. So I'm going to say around 80%. The next prompt is F is for fantasy. Who is your favorite fantasy author? I don't want to be a hipster here, the kind of hipster that says, oh, you like the Green Frogs? Well, I guess their latest album's okay, but I really like their very first album. Oh, Around the Bend? Oh no, Around the Bend wasn't their very first album. Surprised you didn't know that. No, they did an in-studio only, unreleased, and there are only 2 copies album before Around the Corner. I'm surprised you didn't know about that, but it's actually the best thing they ever did or ever will do. That kind of hipster, I hate as much as anybody else. I was into them before anybody knew about them. My favorite album by the Green Frogs is actually the one they did before they even knew they were a band. They didn't even know each other. Somebody made a mash tape of them doing their separate instruments in harmony in their separate bedrooms 5 years before they met each other. I'm surprised you didn't know that. I don't want to be that kind of avocado munching hipster. Nevertheless, in terms of pound for pound, book by book, short story by short story, I'm going to have to say one of the originators of what we consider to be fantasy, Lord Dunsany. I'm going to have to say him. If you just go by the sabermetrics, if you just go by pound for pound, story by story, book by book, then I'm going to have to give it to Lord Dunsany, even though he was the first. Then the next prompt is F is for 5 stars. How many books have been 5-star reads for you this year? I don't rate my books with stars. I don't know what 5 stars means, and I don't think that any two people who give books 5 stars have the same definition of what it means. If what's meant here is what are the most outstanding books you've read this year, I am still calculating that. It is June. For a chunk of June, I was not feeling very good, so I am a little bit behind in calculating my mid-year belt tightening in preparation for my year-end Steve Reads list of the best and worst books of 2021. A definitive list that is far more reliable, far more definitive, far more wide-ranging than the similar lists that are done by whole book departments of major newspapers and magazines. In order for that to be even remotely doable, especially at the very end of the year when I am beginning to regenerate, I have to take stock halfway through, and I do that in June, but I'm a little bit behind in doing that this year. And I figure that once I have done that, that will be a perfect opportunity for the mid-year freakout tag that I've done before, and that it's an evergreen tag. You do it every year with your year's reading. So I'm thinking I'll do that. There are a handful of books here for this question that are on my mind, but I'll want to weigh them against everything else. So I'm going to pass on this one question, and we'll move on to F is for funny. Funny has 2 meanings: funny strange or funny ha-ha. What is a book that you found both kinds of funny? And it's on my mind recently. It's come to the forefront of my attention recently. It's Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon, which is both a decidedly odd book, and also laugh out loud funny. And for long stretches, laugh out loud funny, including a couple of stretches that are laugh out loud funny and intensely politically incorrect. So, which just makes them funnier unless you have bought in completely to the beehive hairdo Stepford Wives 21st century censorship, where you even censor yourself. If you've become Cotton Mather, then you won't find those passages funny, and you will want to remove them from the book. You'll tear them out of the physical copy that you have. You'll want to tear them out of every copy that is in existence, and you'll also maybe want to tear something biological off anyone that laughed at them. But if you haven't succumbed to that Cotton Mather sickness, then you'll be laughing, and you'll be a little bit ashamed that you are. Then the next F is for Fight Club and film adaptation. What book and film adaptation both merited 5 stars in your opinion? I'm gathering from the phrasing of this question that Jim thinks Fight Club is an example of this. Naturally, I'm a book critic, so the stumbling block here for me, 5 stars at least in the colloquial sense, means perfect. It means I loved this thing perfectly. There were no distracting defects that would make it a 4-star thing. And there is no perfect book. And a critic who thinks otherwise is a bad critic. So that's a stumbling block right here. And that made it Fight Club, for instance, is most certainly not a perfect book. But it's a very genuine book. It's dude bro. It's dude bro lit. So it has built-in limitations. There are, in fact, more than one gender in the world, but for instance, and nothing useful has ever been solved by punching something, and many other dude bro limitations. But nevertheless, the book has a certain zing, has a certain energy, and so does the movie. So maybe that's the kind of thing that Jim is thinking about. I rack my brains anyway. You know, if you've watched this channel, that I consider most movie adaptations to be better than the original book source material, mainly because so many books are so bad. But there are lots of bad movies too. So what I was looking for here in my answer here was not perfect books, but really good books, really good works of literature that were made into equally good adaptations. I tried for that, which rules out a lot. It really does. It rules out a lot. What are some famous examples? Howard's End, Portrait of a Lady, that sort of thing. Though there have been movie adaptations of those, but they don't approach the greatness of the books. And then there have been movie adaptations of that I think drastically improved books, where the movie is much closer to 5 stars than the book was. So I tried to pick a few books, a few book movie adaptations where that gap was as narrow as could be. I came up with 5. I could come up with more probably, but I came up with 5 to start with. The first one is Ronald Neam's 1969 adaptation of Muriel Spark's The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Spark is known. If the phenomenon that we've talked about on this channel, where an author is forever linked to one book, if that is true, then Muriel Spark will always be linked to The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. It's not her best book, but nevertheless, it is Muriel Spark, so it is very smart and very effective, and it knows what it's about. And so does Neam's movie. The movie is also all of those things. I find a great deal of equivalence between the two, I guess is what I'm going for here. The next one is a little-known work called King Lear. King Lear is Shakespeare's biggest, broadest, most insane, almost unperformable tragedy. I believe that it has the longest and wildest stretches of the kind of genius that you only see if the writer, in whatever format, in whatever venue, has the perfect sync with the performers, with the venue, with the money. If that happens, then you will get a work like King Lear, which is terrifying and amazing. And the adaptation I'm thinking of here is from 1997. It's a stage adaptation by the late Ian Holm, that a lot of you will know as the old Bilbo Baggins in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. Ian Holm was a fantastic actor, and he, late in life, did a stage production of King Lear that was amazing by all accounts. I never actually got to see it on stage, but the BBC did, I believe it was the BBC, did a sort of closed theater stage production of it. So they didn't film a stage production. Instead, they got all the cast and had them do the whole thing as if they were doing a nightly performance, only it was all camera angles and there was no audience. So you got as close as you were going to get unless you went to the theater in London and actually saw it. And it was astonishing. Easily the best King Lear that I have ever seen. When King Lear goes crazy, what you're supposed to feel right in your bones when you're watching an adaptation, a stage play or whatever of King Lear, what you're supposed to feel is that a sane character has gone insane. and that virtually never happens. Watch, for instance, probably there's a free version on YouTube, Laurence Olivier's King Lear. It's fine, precise acting, but the feel of it is as if a very senior executive found a piece of paperwork misfiled. Whereas when Ian Holm's King Lear goes crazy, he goes crazy. He loses it completely. On the London stage, the Heath scenes, the famous Heath scenes in The Storm, were done by what was Holm in his late 60s by then. They were done in the nude and were viscerally moving. The 1997 there was a closed stage filmed version that I saw. I've watched it many times, and it was astonishing. So as great as Lear is, I thought for a long time in my life that it couldn't be adapted. Not really, and this does. The Ian Holm does it. So I'm going to include King Lear on my list. Then the next one would be Huck Finn, Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, which I'm going to go, once again, I'm going to go to Broadway. I'm going to go to Roger Miller's 1985 adaptation, Big River, which manages to capture both the silliness and the fun, but also the savagery and the seriousness, the pathos. Big River manages to capture all of those things in a way that I can't imagine anyone adapting Huck Finn in the 21st century. I can't imagine anyone doing that, because according to the aforementioned censorship rules of the 20th century, when you were casting Huck Finn, the actor that you got to play Huck would have to be a black woman. And needless to say, that ruins the dynamic. Even if you didn't want to play gender politics, you could not cast a white Huck. And you have to. You absolutely have to. And even if you were somehow to get permission from the censors that we have given power over our lives to cast a white boy as Huck Finn, you would absolutely certainly in the 21st century have to cast him as a hateful, spitting bigot, a proto-Klansman. Huck is none of those things. So in order to do that, you just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it at all. But Big River, I think, does it. I saw Big River many times on stage and loved it every time. I don't know if I think there was, once again, a closed set version that might be available on video. But then again, maybe not. Maybe this is something that I'm recommending to you that you can't actually ever see, which would be kind of rude of me. So let's just move on. The next one is Passage to India. E.M. Forster's A Passage to India. That was made, David Lean made it into a movie in 1984, and I think did a perfect job. Not perfect in the literal sense, but his movie version was as good as the book, which is no small thing, because the book is brilliant. But I thought the movie version was brilliant too, so I'm going to throw it out here. And then the last one, because this is perilous going here, is Tom Jones by Henry Fielding, one of my favorite novels in English, that was made in 1997. The BBC made it a miniseries, and they cast Max Beasley, unconventional as the casting for Tom Jones, and they filled it with seasoned BBC actors of all kinds. Just every scene will have a familiar face for you, and I thought it was beautifully done. Just beautifully done. A long time. It's a long miniseries, but you need that. I don't know that you can do, no offense to Albert Finney, but I don't know that you can do Tom Jones in a 2-hour movie. Whereas this miniseries does it perfectly, all the way up to the beautiful, beautiful final scene. Not the climax of the show, not the big reveal. There's a big reveal in Tom Jones. You won't be able to guess it. If you don't know Tom Jones and you see it first through this miniseries, you won't be able to guess it. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the story climax. I'm talking about the adaptation climax that happens afterward and is just so sweet. Just a sweet, sweet moment. But that's what we're going to do for Fight Club and film adaptation for now. I could make a series of long videos on film adaptations, but we'll move on for now to the next one, which is F is for Frida. This is a chance to show off your furry friends. For those of you who are new to the channel, this little furry thing on the shelf there is Frida, my little miniature schnauzer, who's a little demoralized because it's hot and humid here, and that just takes the wind out of her sails. But you've seen her. She's been in many, many videos. She took over the dog hosting duties for the 2 dogs that I had when I started this channel. I had an old pointer, Malin, and an old basset hound, Lucy, and they'd been inseparable sisters for 15 years. And when I started this channel, they were white-faced and very slow and very, very cute and very old, and starting to get sick, starting to fail, starting to leave me. And Lucy did die, and then Malin was alone and miserable. And then I got a puppy, totally unplanned. I got a puppy that was Frida, and she's been around ever since. But definitely when you do this tag, I want to see all the furry friends. And then the next prompt is F is for flower. What is the last book you read with the name of a flower in the title? I had to rack my brains. I had to go into my records for this. It was, I finally got around to reading Blood Roses by Catherine Warner, which is a sort of a history of the houses of York and Lancaster, the famous houses from the Wars of the Roses. Only it's meant to be a story that climaxes with the beginning of the Wars of the Roses. It's meant to tell you the story, the multi-biographical story of those houses before the clash that made them famous. And it was fairly good reading. There were large chunks of it that were a little on the pedestrian side. I don't think I was its ideal audience, but it was fairly good reading. It has roses in the title. I'm guessing that's the latest one. And then the last prompt is F is for flash fiction. What are your thoughts or experiences of this medium? And inevitably, even though Jim is not a Dude Bro reader and he's not a Dude Bro author, inevitably he brings up that stupid squib by Hemingway, baby shoes, never used, for sale, a ridiculous thing that people, Dude Bro readers, for instance, invariably say that it's the greatest short story ever written, man. It's the greatest short story ever written, man. It's not. It's not even a short story. Something has to happen in a short story. It's a suggestion. It's an idea. It's a mordant quip that you do drunk at 3 a.m. and whatever. It comes up whenever flash fiction comes up, and it drives me crazy. If I never hear that stupid haiku of BroTube again, it'll be too soon. On the broader sense, flash fiction is never really flash fiction if what you mean by fiction is a story. Inevitably, flash fiction is an aphorism, a setup for a story. It lacks discipline, and that's why it appeals to so many people, because it lacks discipline. But it is largely dumb. It's largely adolescent. It's largely yet another way that, especially the 21st century, strains to get all the benefits of hard work without doing any hard work. So I'm, needless to say, not its biggest fan. And that is the F tag, done on iMovie. So is this going to work? Is this actually going to work? I don't actually know. As far as I can tell, this video is still recording. As far as I can tell, it's had no hiccups at all. It certainly hasn't frozen. So I guess everything after this will be, can I export it to my desktop? Can I upload it to YouTube? We shall see. But before I go, I want to tag people. I'll tag David Wiley, Libraries and Labradors. If you look at her backlog of videos, you will see her adorable dogs. Michael K. Vaughn, Matthew at Mayberry Book Club, Brian at Bookish, if he's back on the tag train, so maybe he'll do this one, and of course Frida. I haven't tagged in a while. I'm feeling a little remiss. So there you go. That is the F tag, and this is an experiment. This is the Frankenstein F tag. Is this going to work? We shall see. The nice thing about a tag is that if it doesn't work, I can just redo it. It's not like mail. So I'm going to wrap this up, and hopefully you will see this video. Thank you.